Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and to our viewers around the country, good evening. Welcome to Tanim Graun. My name is Alan Bird, and I'll be your host for this afternoon. Today's discussion is on arts for development, investing in the creative industries in PNG. Now, it's going to be interesting because this is usually an ignored part of our economy. The emergence of creative industries around the globe is well documented. Now, the UN says this. In 2013, it generated $624 billion worth of revenue. For those of you in PNG, that's possibly $2 trillion Kina, sorry. Creative industries not only have the potential to create jobs and wealth, but also the generation of intellectual property. There's things like creativity, innovation, particularly in young people. Joining us to discuss this are a very renowned group of experts. Some prefer to be called advocates. I'll start on my left. Welcome Oalamoy. He regards himself as a copyright advocate. We have Dr. Verena Thomas. She comes to us from University of Groka. The great Nora Vagi-Bresh. I was reading about you when I was in university. Welcome, Nora. On my right-hand side, I'll start with Dr. Michael Mel from the University of Groka again. Ruth Cholai, welcome. Ruth has an interesting, she represents an interesting group. Mr. Daniel Waswas, in his very little introduction, he's an internationally known artist and he's the founder of the PNG Gallery. And of course, Martin Namarong. I don't need to introduce him, he's very, very popular. Let me ask the panel. We all know the immense talent and the creativity of Papua New Guineans, and we see that every day. Now, what is being done to harness this potential for social and economic growth? And maybe some of you would like to give us a bit of an overview from segments of this sector that you represent. I'll start maybe on my left, Oala.
I'm speaking in terms of the music industry, copyright and human rights owners. Just quickly, we have been struggling to find remuneration for our work that's played on radio, played by our other colleagues here and overseas, used on television. So that is one aspect that I'd like to bring to the discussion here, how we can have a mechanism in Papua New Guinea to remunerate music artists.
Now, Bilums. Ruth.
Bilim has been around for as long as Papua New Guinea has been established, and the International Trade Center is the UN and WTO agency, so we're looking at Bilim as an economic driver, so arts and development is perfect place for me to be sitting in.
Daniel?
How we can use our practice to sustain our life in the context of everybody enters the university through the grade point average system. There are pathways where from grade 12 you can push for your passion, and how we can add value to that passion to make it a product where we can add value to the actual creative industry and create another economy within the sector in this country.
Okay, Nora?
In my industry, you don't curl up in bed with a play or a poetry. It needs to be out in the open. And what we need to do now, or should have done long ago, is to have places where you can do them and have the support from the government, which is not around, not in my experience anyway. We might have the NCC, but that's about all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Nora. Dr. Mel, the economic potential for us, would you like to talk about that? Just describe it for our audience.
Arts for development. We can focus firstly on development, the idea of development. And particularly in the context of Papua New Guinea today, there's been a lot of talk, there's been a lot of activity in terms of development, particularly in the mining sector, in the industrial sector, agriculture. A lot of the development ideas have been very much forged in those hard material areas. The arts have not been featured in any of those development agendas, as though it is of no value, of little consequence to quality of life, of little consequence to economic growth. Existing practices, policies advocate for development for hardcore material development, whereas the arts, if they are significant to anyone, they're featured very little. So this particular forum, this program, is very significant to now redressing, seeking a realignment of the agenda for development in Papua New Guinea. And the arts are and will be and have always been a part of developing greater and better communities. We only need to look at our history and our heritage to see how culture, how arts were significant to our people, how well they stood. And today, and we know it through all kinds of literature, that what makes Papua New Guinea development different is because of our heritage, our history, and our arts. So this is quite significant for us, and it's an opportune time, particularly in the current climate.
Thank you, Doctor. Verena, how prevalent is the importance of arts in education? You come from an educational background. Maybe you could give us a run on that.
I think, following on from Dr. Mel, there's a great cultural heritage in this country. But what we've seen in the last decade, say, is the explosion of digital technologies. And we're looking now at the creative industries, the industries that require creative talent, that can boost the cultural industries, which are about representing identity, creating things, producing things that are meaningful for local identities. Now, when we look at the boost of these digital technologies, we need skills. We need skilled people who can handle these lights that you see here and the cameras, and that can market and boost these cultural industries as a result of that. So we're seeing children now growing up with the iPad and the iPhones and these digital technology. So we need to bring the creative industries into education in order to ensure that we understand what is happening in this global market that we're now dealing with through social media and all these tools. So the creative industries play a significant role in education, not just in itself as a training skilled people, but also in other areas that we need to be just a bit more knowledgeable about all these tools that are now available to us.
Thank you.
Education is quite significant as a contributor to arts for development, in the sense that the arts curriculum in Papua New Guinea, in almost all of our schools in our system of education, is almost absent, both in terms of teachers, but in terms of the curriculum we might have one, but its implementation and the use of, or the development of education in young people through the arts is very negligible. It's not evident at all.
Can I just jump in quickly before we go to an audience question? Why do you think that is? Why is it so invisible in our schools?
It is invisible, largely due to history. The kind of education system that we took on, that was planted in this country, basically focused on a number of key areas that were identified to be important in education, be it mathematics, be it science, be it English. So those areas were and have always been considered to be significant to quality education. The arts, amongst other things, have been considered to be peripheral to quality education. So we have children who have grown up, who are now adults, who are members of our community, who have had either very little or no art education in amongst a quality education. So that is at the nub of some of the issues relating to where the arts are absent in our community, because we have a community that has not been brought up in a balanced and fair way in terms of a full range of a quality education curriculum. The arts are definitely absent.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, we'll keep discussing that as we move through. I want to move quickly to an audience question. Jeremiah Uro, could you please ask your question?
Given that culture is a driver and enabler in economic development, how is the arts and the creative industry in PNG contributing to nation building?
The most significant event in this part of the world was the Melanesian Festival of Arts. Artists from within the region came from everywhere. They came with what has been and is very much a part of their communities and have shared it. Not only the artists came here, but members of the audience from within Port Moresby and around Papua New Guinea came to see, and from around the world. And when they came to see these things, obviously they needed to accommodate themselves. So hotel industries definitely benefit from this. Transport, the taxis, the buses, so there are benefits there. The people who sell food, obviously not only the artists, but members of our communities who come to those events do benefit. So if we are talking about the arts and events relating to the arts are important to economic development, definitely they do provide opportunity for employment, for service industries to flourish, for activities to grow. So the arts are definitely part of the economic agenda. They are not a peripheral industry that could be sidelined and only talked about when it matters, on Independence Day or on Cultural Day. They are indeed a part of our everyday life.
So I think it really reflects back as well on the art. The reason why arts have gone into the periphery again reflects back on the artists. And I like what Daniel's doing now with trying to actually change that narrative, and you're becoming yourself taking up the challenge, and as opposed to waiting for the government to hand down something, because they've had 40 years of doing pretty much nothing.
There are individual artists, particularly painters, that are producing material that reflect the current socio-economics of the country, of the little people. I know Jeffrey Figer did a series of paintings, watercolours, which were reflective of the street life of Port Moresby. Laban Sakale has also questioned beggars on the street. Those sorts of artworks are being produced, but as you say, probably on the peripheral, they need an art gallery perhaps to bring some prominence to those voices that are commenting on our current social context.
Well, I want to ask you now, Nora, which way, big man? What a lovely question you coined, how many years ago? And just as relevant today. I mean, we could look at all of them there and say, which way, big man? In terms of writers, people like you, since your time, I mean, I know there were others. There was a late Reverend, I remember him writing, he passed away. Are there any young playwrights around this?
It's great to know that there are young people interested in this. And of course, we need nurturing again, you know, need I say it again? Arts for development. How can you develop if you're not being enhanced properly? You know,
as a human being?
Yes. Sorry, I'm talking too much here.
No, you're going very well.
Okay. So, you know, to be creative, to do these things, you're going to get out and do it. Well, of course, some of us are getting too old for that kind of thing. We expect young people to get in there and do it, and get moving, bring the development, invest in the creative industry in PNG. We need to do that. It's about time.
The question was, how is the creative industry contributing to nation building? It wasn't so much economic development was the first part. Now, in an earlier discussion, I remember someone talking about young people, left-right hemisphere.
We rarely use the left hemisphere simply because that little voice, that beacon, we do not really, because we do not activate it. We more or less like use the right hemisphere because it's larger. And what I realized was when I came back and worked at the university as the director of the art school, I wanted to create a program for sustainable education and also for the academic world. So if you want to pursue being an art historian, being an academic, a lecturer, by all means. And we can also create another stream where we can base it on practice only. So that's where the dealers, the business, and that adds into the arts of development. And when we were pushing for that, sadly, nobody could understand us. Some of the groups that we were into, nobody could understand us. Simply because lack of awareness, lack of travel, lack of the advances out there. I mean, look at the actors, the musicians, the cartoonists, the multimedia artists, all these lights. These are all field of the arts. And the monetary value on it is, you said it rightly, 624 billion. But that is not translated to the education level here because it is new, it's different.
You're watching Tanim Graun, and we're talking about arts for development for those of you who will be joining us from around the country. Let's now hear, we're going to a talk-out segment, and we'll hear from Jeffrey Figa. Now, Jeffrey Figa is a wonderful young artist, and hopefully he'll be a role model for some of you young, talented people out there who might want to take this road.
I kind of went through life trying out different things, and then I think it was in towards the end of 2013. I've always been pushed by brothers and other people to do art, but it didn't feel like I needed to do it until I met a good friend, Jeff, and he was kind of encouraging me. And then one day he left paintbrushes and paint with me in Moresby while he came back to Alotau, and I picked it up and started painting. So ever since then I saw my first creation. I said, oh, that's beautiful, I may as well just keep on going. What we all need to do is start to just loosen up and let go of certain things in life that are introduced by society, or society that you think that's the way to do things, but it's actually not. You know, there's no rules in life where it says you gotta do these things. You know, there's no rules in life that just says you gotta go to school, get your grade 12 certificate, and go to university, get this job, and go all the way. This just creates ego and negativity amongst everybody, and conflict. I think that everybody should start, pick up a brush or paintbrush or bloody pen, anything. Just go for it, and even a hammer, if you're happy with a hammer and saw, you know. Or go in the kitchen, start being creative. Everybody has a creative side in them, and that's what people don't get. It's just a matter of experimenting with it.
My name is Jeffrey Figa. and I'm a contemporary artist. I've been a professional for over 10 years. I moved to Walatau several years ago, and I began discussions with local community, and we started meeting regularly and talking about things that were in common, like in the arts field. And so we brought enough artists together and enough interested people together to form an association. We titled this association 28K, 28 being, of course, a reference to Millen Bay's size 28, and K as in creative, but with the pidgin way of spelling, I suppose. So with this association, we wanted, our goals were primarily to encourage the arts industry in Alatau, Millen Bay, and Papua New Guinea. And we aim to achieve that through assisting artists in any way. That meant providing platforms for them to communicate with others through shows and small events, workshops, exhibitions, yeah, that sort of thing. And one of those ideas, one of the concepts that was birthed from our association was an open mic event, an open mic night. Open mics are something that are done all over the world, so it's definitely not unique to Millen Bay, to Alatau. But essentially what they are is people being honest and sharing, expressing themselves in the most honest way. So that can be done through so many means. And we try not to define too much of what's on show, because to define is to negate something, to limit all its possibilities. So we just keep it rather open. As the title suggests, it's an open mic night. Amongst many of our ideas, we would like to host 4 events this year in Alatau. So the first event is a contemporary art exhibit. So we want to work with the local artists here, carvers, painters, or any forms of art really, to exhibit in an art show. And secondly, we thought of a fashion weekend, so an Alatau fashion getaway, and we want to encourage local designers and also people who create products that go along with some of the designs, provide an avenue for them to make some revenue, but also provide an opportunity for people in Port Moresby or other centres to come to Alatau for this getaway weekend. The third thing that we're doing is a musical theatre production, and this musical theatre production is basically, it's called Paradise How, and it's about our story and journey as artists, and we're telling basically our own story, and it's just the mediums, the theatre, the musical theatre. And finally we have a children's theatre production, Ulena and the Seven Shorties, which is a parody of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The arts can contribute to nation building because the arts allows us to get in touch with who we are and to create a space of honesty amongst us.
Well, to the panel, what do you say to that?
The unfortunate part of this, for the artists, is that there is no public art gallery. There are no public facilities where the arts can thrive. There are no national collections. If there are any, they have not been taken up. So if a nation is to vision itself, is to imagine itself, it's to locate itself in any sense, then the arts are definitely a window. But if we are to create that opportunity, we need those public facilities where the artists can then be allowed to create. They can then be allowed to develop what they're best at and then collect and contribute to a national image. And when that is not being allowed, then we cannot imagine ourselves or reflect on who we are. The arts are windows into who we are, and if there's an absence, then I think as a country, as a nation, we are missing out on some things that are fundamental to a community, to a nation.
If I can call it Jeffrey's story, is that it really not only speaks about the lack of or little support given to creative individuals. For me, if I can use one definition of creative industries, really focuses on individual creativity, individual talents, individual skills, and how they express that, how they exploit that, if they don't allow others to exploit it on their behalf. And basically, Jeffrey's story is a semblance of that individual creativity, individual skills, individual talents, and how they have individually set up a platform, call it open mic, or one of the activities is open mic, and displayed it, that they can do it individually. But then again, I don't dismiss the argument that they also need support from the government, from non-government organizations as well.
But let me ask another question, slightly, yeah?
I just want to jump in here. Maybe first as a question to Dr. Mel and Dr. Thomas. Dr. Mel, I like what you said about creating these spaces for artists, and you're obviously very senior at the University of Goroka. How are you guys working on creating that space for artists in the Highlands region?
Goroka, the fact that we have what we consider to be an arts faculty or school focusing on the arts, and in particular in the creative arts, that in itself we believe is fairly significant in wanting to invest time, resources to an area that's to a large extent is being neglected. Neglected in the sense that the investments that are being made are negligible. When you look at NCC, when you look at the National Museum, facilities like that are great for a country, but the amounts of money that we're investing in those institutions are a far cry from what they should be operating with. And so for an institution like University of Goroka, as I'm sure others are, where we invest our best in those industries, certainly with the new media, new technology that's come in, where film and the film industry, which was once thriving in Goroka some 20, 30 years ago, was allowed to really go down. But we've made the efforts to try and partner with, but also as an institution, brought that back in. And we hope that to develop that further, it's really an institution making its decisions about prioritizing and ensuring that the arts are not forgotten, that they're not a sideline menu, but they're...
Let's move to an audience question. Lisa in Apparel, could you please ask your question?
My question is to Dr. Thomas. The Papua Mary video series that was produced and directed by PNG Women team, in your opinion, how can more women be encouraged to engage and participate in the creative industry of PNG?
One was to address the issue of inequality around women in leadership positions. So we created these portraits of women in leadership. At the same time, we thought, who would be best to tell these stories of women? So we selected 6 female directors to tell these stories. And we find that in the creative industries, equally men and women do participate. But there is a way that we can share stories, and the creative industries are offering that opportunity when we're talking about plays and we're talking about create the arts. You know, we're thinking about how do we produce this so it reaches wider audiences. So with Power Mary, we wanted to capture these stories of 6 women, but really share it with the nation. And that is about how do we distribute it then, how do we create it. So I think there is great potential for women to be in that industry and be actively in this industry. At the same time, we can also address the issue of gender imbalance with that industry by distributing product, by the way we write stories and how we share them with others.
I'm getting the sense that you're a small group, all you artists. In that tiny little group, what proportion is women?
I facilitated a workshop. It's not a workshop, it was a public forum at the National Museum and Art Gallery for Port Moresby-based musicians. 36 people turned up. I promoted it on Facebook with the help of Armstrong Gomara, Daddy G, is a recording artist. Out of the 36, only one woman turned up. Taita Maragas is a recording artist. So that gives you at least a snapshot of the gender imbalance.
As an artist, advocate, a songwriter, do you think more women could be successful in songs and things?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I believe in that. I think we are still trapped, if I can use that word. It's probably really strong, but trapped where we are not recognizing the potential of women to do anything and everything, and musicianship included, the music industry included. I think they can.
And maybe if we're encouraging them from an early age at school.
I would disagree with you on the idea that we're such a small group. Look at the number of women who weave bilums in this country. They're not a small group. Look at the number of people who carve things. How do we define art in this country? And again, it goes back to this question that I suppose you development specialists deal with again. And how do we discuss the question of development of this country? Do we just use numbers to make arguments? And if people want numbers, it's, no one's really done studies on arts, but you could infer based on what's happening in the national economy. Yeah. So we had a very big gas project in this country which created 25,000 jobs. And of the 25,000 jobs, Papua New Guineans only got 8,000. I can imagine that the rest of the people who did not get those jobs were probably, very skilled craftsmen, women, and our development specialists did not create or are not creating these enabling mechanisms for all those skilled craftsmen and women to participate in the national economy. Instead, the narrative of development is just, let's create conditions conducive for foreign investment, blah, blah, blah. And what about all our people who are going to miss out on the so-called foreign investment? Because their strength is maybe not in engineering, but, in weaving bilums. Why aren't we helping them? Do the people who weave bilums in this country matter?
In many ways, the sports in this country, particularly things like rugby league, but there are now a number of other sports that are moving forward, largely because of corporate intervention. It's part marketing, but also led by the belief that it's good for people, it's good for the organization itself. So there's been a lot of money that's been put through in those activities, particularly sports. Digital, for example, in the way that it's taken up the Digital Cup, in the way that it's promoted, and then the rugby league, both the local one as well as the regional one that they're involved with. But with sports, it does add value to nation building. But in relation to the arts, there is very little that's actually been put in by corporate bodies in supporting artists, in supporting art activities, and whether it be men or women. There's very little that's come through. Of the event last year, for example, the numbers of companies that came forth to support artists, or the number of awards that are supported by industry so that artists could paint or performers could develop and write and contribute and then compete, so that industry is seen to be supporting the arts. So if nation building is a point to be made through sports, the arts have been neglected in terms of it being an agenda for national development. And I think there is a call for all, both government as well as industry, to take up the opportunity to really contribute to national development through the arts.
Lacking. I mean, you see that when there's a sporting event, the corporate world really get behind it. But when it comes to art, it's very, very slow, if not negligible. But then it also comes back to the whole concept about left and right brain. I think, just to touch on that again, is that we as a nation have encouraged our children to go to school, become lawyers, accountants.
Doctors and rugby players.
Which uses the right side of your brain, but they're like, no, don't be a musician because you'll never make money. Don't be a painter because you'll never make money. And so that whole concept of denying the left side of your brain, I think, has been, this is the effect that we have now, is that everybody does not, everybody in the population at large does not value the arts.
Thank you, Ruth. Now, we're going to go to a talk out, but before I do, you're watching Tanim Graun, and I hope the Hunters win this weekend.
Le marmare wale, le marmare wale, rabbe awai. Le marmare wale, le marmare wale, rabbe awai. Denani maya made tunai rairo. Lulu bungari le malmare wale rabbe awak tenani mama di tulai rairo lulu bungari.
Yes, me pelaut musik mal Papua New Guinea. Me like tok lik long industry. Me looking at work alright good now. Same before long 80s, come on top. Me play all musicians have been animal good play royalties long music me play. Enough long 1992, 91 all this time music industry work been work out good now enough today. Music emi one play way. It's very important for me play music man. And one play way where all musicians can see money. Studios can employ more. All beginning by go working more work, recording, music, all salim music blow, all money buy, all can see money, album family, and beginning blow. Baik putar pukai lo para tulungnya now yet all studio mo Alvin Mipla yet you look long distributed in alone you look long lick studio you not believe in he got okay nearly I get a villages he got 2 recording studio blow one musicians like not me mass 100 over something long one village. So all this line only more likely school more long walking good real music lo Papua New Guinea. You go lo Bougainville, you go lo Kimbe, you look Piny Sla. So me play the more good play encouragement or good play school lo learning me play lo walking more good play music na salim outside lo country. Because lo inside lo PNC me nothing by you can salim one play good play music more lo good play where me play must go back lo roots music lo Papua New Guinea as me talk finish string band sing tumbona me play must katim na salim go outside lo Narabla country where boli accept him because Papua New Guinea i bagarap finish where me talk true me play na kisimo wan platoya lo music me play lo here lo Papua New Guinea so all this style where lo tumuna na imi creative click atin by good long market lo outside long PNC lo ting lo mina look lo me play lo plenty up lo world na mi sawe how all white man he like accepting music play me lo Papua New Guinea. By working big pla money. So what do me pla music man need him now? Let him support the government. Support the government. He must tomo money come lo me pla. Na look sabe lo me pla. Na cleaning bes la industry where you can invite him to all tourists lo come. No look lo la good the music play. You mean no sort lo style or culture play me. You mean rich lo culture. You mean must strong bes la something. Na government now me ask him government lo Peter O'Neill only must look long that music industry lo Papua New Guinea where we must all me blow on music man.
And he's a wonderful, wonderful talent.
A point that got my attention to this is authentic Papua New Guinean music. There is definitely a way in which Sir George really adds value to us, not only in PNG but in other countries, in the way that he sings in his own language and talk pisin. It was a sad day when on the floor of Parliament, almost all the parliamentarians, our elected leaders, decided that English was the mode for education in Papua New Guinea and that vernacular education was in fact destroying our country. It is really the other way around, but they, on the floor of Parliament, decided that it's very, very sad to know that our own authentic languages have been denied a right of place in our classrooms of the 21st century. I think if we are going to develop anything about Papua New Guinea, it's our languages, and Sir George in many ways advocates that quite strongly in creating songs and developing music that is now internationally available, that celebrates being Papua New Guinean. And so in many ways for me, in watching that footage, it just underlines that we are indeed an authentic people and that the languages are indeed our signatures. And therefore advocating for our languages is quite significant.
Thank you. There was a second bit about them not making enough revenue from the music.
Perhaps let me just get into the context of what George or Sir George is talking about. Remember, he is a performing musician, a recording musician. He's talking about, to me, he's talking about the commercial recording industry in terms of the music industry. And notice that he refers to world music. It's a genre in terms of, if you're recording music, it's not jazz, it's not pop, it's world music, or sometimes it's referred to as tribal music. His other colleague, David Bridie, who really gets a lot of support through One Talk Music Foundation, and they really support George Telek touring and performing overseas, has told me that in Europe, world music, tribal music is very popular. If Mr. Telek was here, one of the questions I would ask is how much has his music brought back to the Papua New Guinea economy? Now, I would like to know that. If it's 1 million kina, if it's 500,000 kina, wow. You know, and today we're talking about investing in the creative industries in Papua New Guinea, music per se. Sir George is one example that tells us that really music can contribute to development in Papua New Guinea. Let me get back to your question of remuneration. Why are musicians now claiming that they are receiving less and less or nothing? Understand that when the commercial recording industry started, and there's a lot of arguments when it started, but I'm going to say it started in the 1978, in 1980s, with pre-Mr. Raymond Chin, and then Raymond Chin brought in Chin H. Min, is that we had recording artists sign recording agreements at a time when they had little or no knowledge about entering into music contracts. And so for the 20 years after the 1980s, a lot of musicians, recording artists, all they knew about music and any income out of music was through recording royalties. You buy my cassette, I get some money out of that. Now, that business model, if you understand now with the digital economy, has gone. It's literally gone now. The landscape has shifted. Now, another issue I want to bring out now is, are a lot of my colleagues in the music industry aware that recording is not the only income source there is. Have you thought about composing for film? Have you thought about, for those who are not fortunate enough to pick up live gigs in Papua New Guinea, in Port Moresby, in fact, that is where a lot of musicians earn their money week in, week out by playing at hotels and all that, private gigs. What about radio stations in Papua New Guinea? I know PNG FM pays royalties to people or to recording artists whose music is played on Legend FM, Yumi FM, and Now FM. What of the others? That's public performance royalty that's paid out. In this country, it's not paid. And that's something that Sir George is probably referring to as well.
Yeah, I don't know why something that's so glaringly obvious, that there is a strength that our people have, the creative people, yet we're not exploiting that. Instead, we prefer selling our resources for peanuts.
While there's been a shift in the, in terms of, from cassettes to now flash drives, and it's easier to copy, and obviously the music industry that had an impact on the music industry. At the same time, there's also a massive growth, because now you can create a song and you can upload it and sell it on iTunes. So you have at your fingertips a global market that you can access and that you can sell to. Now, what I think we need to increase here in Papua New Guinea is this skill training, to understand these global markets, to train artists as entrepreneurs and producers, and do it like the rest of the world is doing, because there's immense talent in this country, and the way what the music industry can create, or the potential film industry, we can access that global market digitally.
There is no existing policy that requires for a certain percentage of content that is homegrown content that should be broadcast as opposed to bringing everything in from outside. And we are definitely a menu for all the content coming from outside, which then defeats our own creativity and our own opportunities, because local industry does not want to support local artists, say for instance in television. If there is going to be demand for local content, if the policy is there that makes certain that broadcasters do have a space, it automatically sets up people to ensure that there is production. And when you do production, then you need people. So training institutions and all of that tends to take up the opportunity to train people, and people then develop content. And standards, quite often, when you have an element of competition amongst many providers, it tends to improve and then you can then put in policies to improve content and so forth. But when you don't have a policy like that, then there's no room for it, nothing sprouts.
And I want to move you to a gender talk out next. For our television viewers, you're watching Tanim Graun.
I'm Rosalind Koisen. This is my husband James. I've lived in Alatau for 12 years. At the moment I'm raising 3 children. I'm a homeschool mother, so I teach from home, and I also do some music with my husband.
If only you would realize I don't want to go, but you're pushing me away, chipping pieces of my love away. I don't want to go, but the longer that I stay, you're chipping pieces of my love away.
Music, the arts can do so much. You have the youth, there's so much you can do. Performance art, fine art, music, whatever it is, everybody has something in them that they want to do. Everybody can sing. Everybody wants to get up and dance. Everybody has something in them that can be explored. And the arts is there for us to explore that side of us. Whether we take it to a professional level or not, somebody's going to have something in there, and it needs to be made available. James has always been musical. He's played in bands, and that kind of inspired me to have a go. So I just started playing, working with guitar work and putting some music to what I was writing, and then we just started doing that together. James has helped me with that, and then 28 Creative was the platform that got me and got us out. We have a very unique household. I homeschool, and I'm able to do that because James supports the concept of teaching at home, our children. So we have 3 children. They're aged 12 to 6. We're at home all the time, but that environment allows us to, you know, if we feel like picking up a guitar in the middle of the day and writing a song, we can do that. And James supports that, and our children are involved with that. And then when we do things like today, when we come to 28 Creative, we're able to maybe drop the formal schoolwork today. We come out as a family, we're setting up sound, they're learning something as well. So like we're lucky in that sense that what we do at home allows us to grow both ourselves and our family.
The guys I played with before, I think they have the feeling that women should be kept at home, basically. So you won't see their partners sort of taking up music, or they won't support their wives or their partners in music.
I'm Barbara Hines, and I've come up from Brisbane to help advise at this stage on how we move Driftwood Resort forward into the future. And because of my experience in Scotland for 12 years, managing hotels, and particularly one that was an art gallery as well as a hotel, just to use those skills to have use of the local artists, to promote them, promote music, writing, photography, sort of any of the arts, and have artists in residence, different ideas with bird watching weeks, all sorts of things just to bring in, because previously it works extremely well, and you know, hopefully that will help the local community as well as promote the resort and make a very interesting place for people to visit. Yeah, so and that it's benefit to everyone. Apart from, you know, we have fishing and, you know, there's diving and snorkeling, it brings in the other side that's attractive to people that like some of the softer things in life, and also helps with a lot of probably the wives and partners of some of the men out fishing, that we're offering top class art from the area. Gives them a chance to, otherwise, you know, someone coming here wouldn't know about the local artists or even how to access to see their art. So they can come, view it, and, you know, I'd like to think in the future that we can also offer, you know, a week of having an artist in residence, that we can offer packages that people like to come and stay and actually learn how to paint. Yeah, just, I think it just brings that, it makes the resort more exciting and a destination, and yes, it certainly helps the local artists in the community. In Scotland it wasn't so much an issue because most of the people were from Europe or the UK that were coming, so it's quite easy for them to take things back into their country. But we were mailing most of the paintings anyway. Paintings went very well. Yeah, and sculpture, you know, pottery, things like that. The only probably difference here would be because of restrictions with places like Australia, on wood products and, you know, cane and bamboo, things like that, yeah, it might make the difference there. And basically, if people are on holidays from somewhere, or even if there's a cruise ship in, they want something that portrays the area. So possibly, you know, landscape. That's usually what we found in Scotland, was it's the landscape that sells. I'm hoping we can have a really good working relationship with the local artists, and that, yeah, that we can support the community here as well, that it's beneficial to all of us. And hopefully we can negotiate on that and talk about, yeah, things, exciting things that we could use our new conference centre for. I think it would be a perfect venue to set up an art gallery in.
Husband and wife team playing songs. I remember another Khoisan, Clockwork Orange, in the 1970s. He was a drummer.
You know, the gender question in art is really not an issue, because it depends on a person's creativity. It's individual. So whether you're male or female, if you're creative, it's going to pop. It's going to come out. You're just driven to express, well, whether you're male or female.
I guess the thing is, if you have a talent, whether you're male or female,
you follow
if it's singing, playing soccer, playing rugby league, I mean, we keep going there. Any last words, ladies and gentlemen?
The creative industries are one of the largest growing sector in the economy. So we keep making the argument about the arts, but we also can make an argument about the economy. So, and as part of that, I think what hasn't come up yet, when we invest in the human resource, rather than in the natural resource, we're talking about a sustainable industry as well.
Now we need to have some backup from for investment here. And the sooner that happens, for us dead playwrights to come out again, it would be good.
You're not quite dead yet.
Well, almost.
The arts are neglected, and evidence is now also very clear, as has been shared earlier on and in the final words. The arts are definitely there as a contribution towards an overall economy. Elsewhere it's being done, the evidence is there. We are allowing ourselves to miss out on those opportunities with something that was a part of us and is a part of us and must be made to be part of our future.
Please join us next time for another edition of Q&A as we discuss the development challenges that face our nation. And I'm sure for all of you that have watched this show, certainly for me, I think development is not just about making lots of money. You can't eat money and you can't enjoy money. Listening to that, I thought that was beautiful. Thank you very much once again, ladies and gentlemen. Na tingim. In this case, Arts Blow You by Tanim Graun.
Thank you.